Hi, welcome back to the show. Well, it's flattened out for the markets completely. So it seems like we're facing a bit of hurdle at that 58.50 odd level for the index. The 58.40 level, remember, is a 200 DMA, but we've held up just fine. One important internal that you should watch is the way Brent crude is moving. So now it's, when we started off trade, it was somewhere around $111 a barrel. Now it's slipped to $109 a barrel, and this is a 3-week low that we're sitting on in Brent crude. So that's an important positive for a market like ours. It's already a 2.5% fall that you've seen in one trading session. So the going is good, especially the global cues that are stacked up. Ambareesh Baliga of Edelweiss Financial Services joins in as well to talk about the move that we've seen. Ambareesh, hi. The pullback has been strong and steady so far. Things could go either way this week, but which way do you think the wind is blowing?
I would be a bit cautious at this point of time because of the sense that over-exuberance has been there in the market now for the last few days, and that actually leaves hardly any room for disappointment. And from whatever we saw this morning also from the inflation figures, once they were below expectation, you had the markets correcting. So from a monetary policy point of view, I would say that I think it's best to possibly book out to a certain extent and wait as to what he announces for.
Ambareesh, just taking forward that point about the monetary policy, what's your sense about what the commentary is going to be, and is the market perhaps getting too excited that he's going to sound extremely dovish, and in that sense there is a possibility that on Friday we might be disappointed?
That possibility could be there because clearly the market is expecting his commentary to be dovish, and at the same time some people are expecting a rate cut, which I really don't think is really possible in a scenario like this. So maneuverability for him could be very, very limited. And again, since the expectations are high, there is a possibility of a disappointment. So because of that, clearly I'm saying that it is time to book out to a certain extent. I'm not saying that the markets may not really move up in the next few days. It's very very much possible that based on expectations we could see the markets closer to 6,000, 6,050, but utilize that to book out to a certain extent.
The biggest casualty today has been Ranbaxy, Ambareesh, and this at a time when most people were starting to get a little bullish on not bullish, but at least the bearishness was sort of petering out. At 320, how are you approaching all the negative news flow today?
Clearly, this is a huge negative for Ranbaxy, and this is not the first time this sort of a news is coming as far as this stock is concerned. So I think, from an investor's angle, I think it's clearly an avoid. But then, since it has crashed so much, it's very much possible that over the next few days we could see some sort of a bounce back. So I think it's only a trader's stock and not an investor stock at this point of time.
What about IT? HCL Tech has shown you a very sharp correction. It's lost 4.5%. TCS is down close to about 2.5%. For someone who has a 1 to 3 month time horizon on IT stocks, do you think that perhaps it makes sense to book out?
To a certain extent, yes, I would say, because the way the rupee has appreciated, I think appreciation will continue a while longer. Rupees, today you can say that rupee is decently strong as compared to what it was about 15 days back. So I think that will rub off on the IT stocks to a certain extent. So you could see the IT stocks a bit subdued.
Okay, so IT stocks are under pressure today, so some of these stocks should come up for you on your screen. HCL Tech is actually down what now? 4.5%. Volumes are also picking up over there, and TCS2 is back at 1900, so down about 2.5%. Is there anything that you would do with these IT names, Sudarshan, HCL Tech and TCS?
Well, I would actually, in the morning we suggested going short in Wipro, and that suggestion is applicable to HCL Tech also. Short selling in this kind of a market should be done only by professional traders. But yes, the trade here is now to be on the short side.
Ambareesh, how would you approach the other pharmaceutical names? Like, all of them are pretty weak in trade. There's Cipla, Lupin, Sun Pharma as well has come off from the high point of the day. Do you think the impact of Ranbaxy is generally going to dull the mood for the other pharmaceutical names?
It could surely to a certain extent, because this FDI issue is a dangling sword and you don't know as to on whom it will fall next. We have seen that issue with Wockhardt in the recent past, and it's very much possible. Again, there has been talks of some issue with Strides. So it's quite possible that it could affect the other pharma companies. So surely there would be some pressure.
Okay guys, we'll stick with stocks, but just to point out again the way crude is falling at this point in time, that's an important internal. It's now at the lowest point of trade, and the news flow is that US and Russia have reached an agreement on getting Syria to give up its chemical weapons. So that risk seems to have been averted, and Brent crude is an important internal to watch out. But let's get back to our own markets. We have our research team standing by to tell us what stocks they've picked up for the last hour of trade. Guys, let's start off. And we have Nigel, then Ekta, followed by Ushang. Nigel, over to you.
Yeah, Sonia, the stock that I've picked is a stock that we don't really talk about, ARSS Infrastructure. That stock has been up nearly around 19-20%. It's being hitting circuit and getting released. Now, this stock has really corrected from its 52-week high that it did see last year in October. It was around 70 rupees at that point of time, and today after the rally, it's closer towards 25 rupees. But it has bounced from its 52-week low of around 13-14 rupees odd. Now, the bounce up today is on the back of that big order that they have won, close to around 150 crores odd, which is more than double of its market cap. This order has been received from the World Bank of Projects, that's in Odisha. Importantly, just look at the financials, it's not very impressive, and also looking at the promoter stake that they have cut their promoter stake on a quarter-on-quarter basis. That's the March quarter versus the June quarter. From around 22% to 18%, so not very good signs for this particular counter. And just looking at the financials in FY13, we did see that they did report a net loss, and that was less than 10% of the total revenue that was earned. But just look at quarter one, because the net loss has come in at nearly 15% of what the net their revenue was. So clearly the bump up in the stock today, but broadly the fundamentals not really holding strong for this counter. That's it from me. Ekta, over to you.
Hi, thanks Nigel for that. Well, Berger Paints is one stock which is on my radar. The stock itself is up around 2%. It is the second price hike that the company has taken in the past 3 months itself. They have hiked product prices by 1.5% to 2%. This current price hike is in transition, but to put things into perspective, this is followed up by 1.5% to 2% of a price hike that they had taken 3 months ago, and that's not it. They are possibly contemplating future price hikes as well. Now, one of their key constituents in terms of a product or raw material is titanium dioxide, which has resulted in their margins possibly being pressured because of higher crude prices, and hence and also being impacted by the rupee depreciation. So there's some amount of pressure on their import prices. The company did mention that demand remains robust in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, but tier 1 cities have taken a bit of a hit in the decorative paint segment. With that, it's over to Ishant.
Well, thanks for that. I've picked up Man Industries. The stock has fizzed out as such as of now, up around 2.5% odd in trade, but the stock saw gains of around 8% to 9% intraday. Over here, the promoters have managed to go ahead and settle the disputes in terms of ownership, which was being an overhang for the company. Additionally, the company has went ahead and re-announced the restructuring of operations. As such, as of now, the company has entered into the scheme of arrangement wherein it involves the saw pipes division, the real estate and the infra business of the company. And from the real estate perspective, the swap ratio will be in the ratio of 1:1, where the shareholders of Man Industries holding one share of ₹5, which is the face value, will get one share of Man Infra Projects going ahead. Additionally, Man Infra Project will also be coming up as an listed entity going ahead, and as per the management, all these three business continue to grow, and with this move, it will be much of a beneficial it's a beneficial move for the whole company, because then there will be much more focus driven towards each business segment. And as of now, there will be three different business segments for the company, and the stock is doing well around 2.5% odd. On that note, back to you.
All right, Ushang, Ekta, Nigel, thanks so much for joining us and giving us your picks. For now, it's still a bit choppy for the market. So now off from the highs, 58.40 on the Nifty. Just see the intraday chart of Bharti Airtel. That's also quite a representative of the kind of volatility that we've seen. Stock had spiked up, and suddenly Bharti Airtel is giving up its gains. All that is taking place just in the last 15 to 20 minutes of trade. Nitin Raheja as well joins into the discussion. Nitin, it's a very big week for the markets. We've got the FOMC, we've got the RBI credit policy. So how should investors and traders approach this week, just for the next 3 to 4 trading sessions?
Well, if you look at it from the short term, I think there has been a lot of optimism that has been built into the markets based on the fact that the right noises that have been made by the new RBI governor. Also the fact that the rupee has bounce back has aided sentiments, and the whole Syria crisis and oil, all of these have kind of combined and they've built up quite an optimistic scenario. But you got a first inkling today morning, for example, when the inflation numbers were more than expectation, the market quickly gave away all those gains. So that's how fragile the market looks at this point of time. I think the RBI policy is something that is going to be looked at very intently. I mean, I think inflation numbers today are some precursor from a perspective that most people will not have too much of expectations, but I think what they will be really looking at is the tone of the RBI policy. The previous RBI policy had a very hawkish tone, more inflation focused. I think here the tone will be really focused on is there a change in terms of focus more on growth, and trying to see how growth can be revived in the economy. So I think there's a lot of expectation sitting there in the markets. We've had a fair run up. I would expect the markets to continue to trade in the short term in a range and be choppy.
Okay, on that note, we'll take a short break, Nitin, but many more questions to be posed to you in just a bit. It's flat for the markets, but it's disappointing really. Could not capitalize on the good moves that the global markets saw, and that's all courtesy that inflation number that disappointed the street. We'll step into a short break and come back with the last 20 minutes.
Welcome back. 58.47 on the Nifty, absolutely flat. Sensex marginally up in the green, but some news flow on Jet Airways, where sources indicate that they're likely to ink a code share pact with Air Seychelles. That's the national carrier of the country. Etihad, remember, holds a 40% stake in Air Seychelles. So Jet Airways has written to the Ministry of Civil Aviation for approval. Jet Airways is actually inching higher on the back of that news, still in the red, but from the lows it's managed to recover a bit. Actually it just turned out to be a bit choppy, so watch out for that. Some news flow on Jet Airways. Ambareesh, how
this comes through, Nima, it'll be quite a big positive for Jet Airways. I mean, it's been going places ever since it inked that pact, in the deal with Etihad. Although the formal clearance still has to come through, but we've seen a lot of management changes, etc. Just 2 days ago, one of its key management pulled out of the company. All of this is a prelude to Etihad coming in, where they're getting very aggressive, and this is an important development. Air Seychelles has been doing very well. The last time I checked, the revenues were growing some 140%, etc. So through this it can sort of get more connectivity, etc., to some of the other areas that it doesn't have a connectivity at this point in time. So perhaps that's the reason why you're seeing a sudden spike up in the stock. Jet Airways has written to the MOCA as well for approval, but currently they're in talks with Etihad for the code sharing agreement with Air Seychelles. We'll try and get you more details on that, but in the meantime, you were checking with Ambareesh?
Yeah, I just wanted Ambareesh's view on Jet Airways. Ambareesh, Jet has found it very difficult to cross that 400 mark, despite most of the news flow panning out in line with street expectation. Where according to you is the stock headed?
I think the good news is already there in the stock price. Etihad's alliance is, I think, already there in the stock price. So I don't see too much of an upside from that angle. But clearly, with the crude coming down to a certain extent, and also the airfares being raised in the recent past, that is surely slightly positive for Jet. So I think it can move up to possibly levels of about 390, 400. I think, like you said, crossing 400 could be quite difficult for this company.
Okay, now again slipping into the red for the Nifty. So by and large it's holding around that pivot point of 58.50. Seems like it will be a flat day of trade today, but Ranbaxy is now the low point of trade, so or closer to that. The lows were about 310 and Ranbaxy is back at the 318 level, down more than 30%. And a couple of these names, BHEL is starting to come off quite rapidly, so BHEL is down about 5.5%. Nitin, the trend last week was that a lot of these high beta names saw a good move, be it BHEL, be it the power names, some of the real estate names, infrastructure too. Just for a immediate trading bet, are these spaces that you like, or is it a complete avoid?
Well, I think if you believe that you can catch that from a trading perspective, great, but I don't think, we possess the skill set. So we really don't see we think a lot of these companies are being looked upon as, long-term contrarian plays, if you want to call it a value plays, but I think the business is going to take some time to turn around and come back. The whole business cycle is not going to emerge out as easily, as one would think. So, right now we would prefer to focus on businesses where there is some visibility of earnings as such.
Nitin, how about something like a power grid in light with the equity dilution that is upcoming?
Sure. So, power grid is, essentially if you look at it from a company perspective, is among the infrastructure companies which has continuously shown earnings growth. It's not been as dependent on, the government regulatory policy or, the mess that the SEBs have been. So, the stock was for a very long time quoting at a sizable, if you might say, a sizable premium to a lot of the infrastructure name, and it has actually seen a time correction since its IPO. I mean, if you've seen the IPO, the last time they raised money was at about 90 rupees, about almost I think 2 or 3 years ago, and the stock traded all the while between 90 and 120 as such. So the stock doesn't have too much of a downside, but it's not one of those high volatile beta names as such. It's a stock which will give you steady earnings. Valuations have now come into within a fair zone as such. It has a strong dividend payout. So, if you're looking for a kind of a defensive infrastructure name, it probably qualifies for that.
Okay, now heading back into the red, Sudarshan, how do you approach the market from now until, say for the next couple of days? Will this no trade strategy on the index hold for the next couple of days as well, given the volatility that we've seen today?
Yes, and I can understand the frustration, but we go through this period of frustration every 2 months, and for years we have done it. So it's now a routine. Markets sometimes go into an area where they don't give us a trend. So that is, it's not that I don't want to trade. It's simply that the markets are not giving us direction. See what the markets have done. Big gap up, strong down move, sharp up move, another down move. Completely untradable. So what will happen is, and then we have 2 news events now, 18th and 20th of September. I suspect a new trend will emerge only after September 20, on or after September 20.
Volatility has picked up a tad bit, so now volatility index for India has gone up by close to about 2.5%, so that also should be up for you on your screen. Need to slip into a very short break on that note, but stay with us, gentlemen. We'll be back after a short break and more market perspective coming up on the other side.
Hi, welcome back to the show. Just counting down to close, so 10 minutes more to go. It'll be a flat close of trade for the markets today after all that chopping around that we've seen. But our guest is still with us. Ambareesh, hypothetically, even if the taper program is not as bad as feared and global liquidity continues to remain benign, do you think that our markets will get back to those pre-taper levels of around 61.50, 61.80, or is that too far a shot from here on?
No, the thing is, momentum can take it to those levels. It's like very much possible. I mean, again, assuming that the monetary policy, policy also is favorable. But the question is whether we will see new highs, whether we see a start of a new bull run. I mean, that I don't see till the elections. So because of which I'm saying that any rise from here should be utilized to book out to a certain extent.
In particular, what are your thoughts on oil and gas names, particularly the oil marketing companies as well as ONGC? We understand that on the 1st of October, the ministry is likely to outline cutting the crude import bill by $19 to $20 billion. So how would you approach, the OMCs or ONGC?
Oil marketing companies, I think, should be positive to a large extent. I mean, especially the way the rupee has appreciated and the way the oil prices are coming down, the crude oil prices are coming down. I think it is quite positive for the oil marketing companies. So I would still continue with my buy on HPCL and BPCL. I think even at these levels, I think HPCL is a great buy.
Nitin, what about you? What is the range that this market could see on the upside if all goes well and if global liquidity continues, as we have been seeing for the past many months? Do you think this market could resume levels of around 6,100?
Well, I kind of agree with what Ambareesh just said. I think, momentum can drive markets to that level. But the question is really how sustainable is it? And I think that's the big question mark as far as I'm concerned. So you might see it going there, but whether it can stay there or make breakouts is really the the doubt that I have. So I continue to believe that the market will trade in a range, and I think this shorter term I don't know where the range could be, but I think in the medium term, the way I look at it, I think this range between 5,200 to 6,000 odd something is where the market will continue to trade as such.
Sudarshan, for someone who is looking to enter into the pharmaceutical name, something like a Lupin, a Sun Pharma, or even a Cipla, from a longer term point of view, then what are the levels, or what would you advise them?
Well, if you are looking at a long-term investment, then all four of these stocks are worth buying even at current levels: Cipla, Sun Pharma, Lupin and Dr. Reddy's. I've not been a fan of Ranbaxy and I'm still not. So it's not a question, because you see there can be a correction. These stocks are likely to correct if the Nifty corrects, but long-term investors cannot time this kind of correction. The long-term trajectory for all of these four stocks is excellent. Another 3 years and you could see one or two of them even doubling.
Okay, actually Dr. Reddy's intraday chart should come up. It's sort of come off from the high point, so there's some profit taking that you're seeing on Dr. Reddy's in the last 10 minutes. There's a sudden knock that stock has seen, so maybe you could perhaps be buying it on a dip. BHEL as well has suddenly cracked, so there's a move to the downside. 137 levels is what you're seeing on BHEL. That's down about 5.5%. Something like Grasim in the last 10-15 minutes has moved on the lower side, so there's some profit taking that you're seeing on a name like Grasim as well. As you can see, low point of trade over there. But we have just about 4 more minutes to go, so let's try and squeeze in some more stocks. Nitin, it's pointless trying to second guess what these events could bring about for the market. So let's talk a little long term. If you had to advise putting in money into a couple of stocks, either frontliners or mid caps, which ones would you bet on?
I think it would be more bottom up, and it could be a few large cap names as well as a few mid cap names. I think for example, if you take the financials, we like someone like a Bajaj Finance, which is an emerging large NBFC in the making as such. Valuations extremely cheap, diversified business model growth. If you take some of the larger cap names, I think we would like to play it through a stock like Maruti, where I think as soon as the business cycle turns, and the fact that it has continuously shown market leadership in the face of odds at all given points of time. So it's really what we're looking at is just pure bottom up, and just to give you a flavor of a mid cap and a large cap idea.
Okay, guys, we'll have to leave it at that. So we just have about 2 more minutes to go. So let's wind down the day's trading action. Choppy day of trade, that's how we can summarize it. And disappointing, actually. We started off with a big bang gap up. We had very good cues at the start of trade. Global markets were upbeat. Asia was looking good. But then we got that inflation data that just poured cold water over all the good sentiment. And the markets came off. In fact, at one point in time, it even went to below 5,800. But then by the time we wound up trade, 58.40 was the level to hold. So flat with a negative bias today. Since the bias was on the negative side, let's talk about the losers. From the heavyweights, the IT space had the biggest knock. So HCL Tech, TCS, I think Infosys as well was in the red, so down about 1% over there. BHEL has had a very good run, all of this month. It's pulled back quite smartly, but it seems like the best may be over. At least that's what the technicals are indicating. So down about 5% on BHL, profit taking there. And Ranbaxy, of course, can't forget that. That's the biggest casualty today, down more than 30% on the back of that US FDA import alert for the Mohali plant. And huge volumes, by the way. I think this is much more than what it trades on a 10-day average, the volumes traded on Ranbaxy today. Apart from that, cement came under pressure. Ultratech, Grasim were all lower. Ambuja Cements was also lower, and a couple of these, pharma names like Lupin, etc. Lupin, Cipla, not just Ranbaxy, so Lupin, Cipla, Dr. Reddy's were all lower as well. On the upside, we saw crude dip in the last half an hour or so. So Brent crude has fallen to below $110 a barrel. On the back of that, actually some of these oil marketing companies were not bad. So BPCL was up about 4%, HPCL started to spike up in late trade. ONGC closes in the green, up about 1.5%. And banks, today the support came in from banks. So IndusInd, ICICI, Axis, etc. were good. So oil and gas and banks on the upside, and IT, you had pharma and you had some of these cement names that were on the downside. All in all, volatile day for the market as prescribed by many of our experts at the start of trade. You can't help but be all over the place when you have big events lined up through the week.
Indeed, but what's a bit disappointing is that despite the relatively flat close in the Nifty and the Sensex, at least the advanced decline ratio was well in favor of the losing side. 450 stocks in the green versus close to about 700, 670 on the losing side. So the advanced decline ratio was negative. Mid-cap index underperformed, a cut of about 0.5%. To talk about the key losers, high beta all the way. So real estate names cracked in trade, something like an HDI was quite weak. Infrastructure names like a Punj Lloyd as well closed a bit subdued. These stocks lost ground. You had some weakness in OptoCircuit, a financial technology, a Walkard, MTNL. All these stocks corrected quite a bit in trade. Jayaprakash Power, Adani Enterprise, a couple of the other key losers. So just to summarize, on the losing side, it was a lot about real estate and a lot about infrastructure names and news-driven counters like a financial technology. On the gaining side, you had gains in a JSW Steel and NHPC, HCL Infosystems, where there was some news. Stock closed up with a gain of close to about 10-odd%. A few banking names like a Yes Bank, a UCO Bank, Union Bank, a few on the financial side like an LIC Housing Finance closed up in the green. So banks provided that bit of a support, and other gainers include something like an Ashok Leyland as well as Idea Cellular. All in all, on the final tick, the Nifty stands at that 58.35 level. The rupee is currently hovering around that 62.7 mark, I'm sorry, on the rupee dollar. But what was positive is that crude has actually declined by 2.5% in today's trade. So Brent crude is now below that 110 mark, 109.2. So crude is another positive internal. Flat for the frontliners, mid-caps underperforming. Sudarshan, how would you approach something like a Tata Motors DVR? Today, Tata Motors stock is flat, in fact closed in the red, but the DVR was actually up 2.5%. Technically, is DVR looking a little better?
It always usually is better on the bullish side, on the upside, the DVR. But today, as of now, the underlying is the key chart, and Tata Motors is going through a correction. So neither of them is a buying opportunity. But Tata Motors is in an uptrend. Whenever in a day, 2 days, this choppiness ends and the market gives us a sign of going up, Tata Motors should be a strong candidate for moving up.
Okay, you want to leave us with a couple of stocks for tomorrow, Sudarshan? Anything that you would recommend buying or selling?
Well, cement stocks are now probably bottoming out. One of them for a trade is Shree Cement. Shree Cement is worth buying in the morning. It's not a day trade, but I think there's a strong momentum coming up there. So if you want to hold it for a few days, it's a very good idea.
Nitin, anything in the sugar counters that you like?
Absolutely nothing. We try and avoid all these so-called regulated counters, because none of these companies have pricing power in their hand, nor are there raw materials in their hand. So we kind of stay away from any of these so-called highly regulated businesses.
Okay guys, thanks for joining us in this last 1 hour of trade. It's been disappointing for the market. So choppy day of trade. We have underperformed the globe because of our own macro mess. So the Nifty closes below that 58.50 zone. We'll take a break and come back with lots more market talks. So stay tuned.